Welcome back. This is Barbara's Book Club. I'm Barbara. Hi, how are you? We're going to do a themed reading video. So the theme for this is going to be Isolated Femmes. I've picked out 5 books that I think fit the theme, and I'm just going to go through them really quickly. This is in no particular order, and then we'll talk about the first book that I read. All right, so first up is The Unworthy by Agustina.
Bazterrica.
I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. We have In the Dream House by Carmen Maria
Machado.
We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer. I'll learn to say that man's name. Maybe. That is what I have on my reading list. I've already finished The Unworthy, and we're going to go ahead and talk about it. So I've heard some whispers on the internet that people did not like this book. They felt like it was boring, it had no point, there was no plot, it was all over the place, it didn't make any sense. And I don't know if we read the same book, but I enjoyed this book. I thought it was really well done. I thought it was an excellent commentary on what our future may be like about 2 to 3 generations ahead. I think people need to go into this book with this in mind. If you're the kind of person who would want to find a journal randomly and read it, you'll probably vibe with this. If you're the kind of person who's, why would I read somebody's journal? That's boring. This isn't going to be for you. But you know, people also didn't like Tender as the Flesh, which this author also wrote. And I really enjoyed that. And I think this author is either you get it or you don't. I think that's the two camps. Either you get where she's coming from or you like Taylor Swift. I think that's... Okay, let me tell you what this is about. I'm going to spoil every single book on this list. So if you don't want to be spoiled, come back after you read them. Hello, Editing Barbara here. I needed to pop in and give a content warning for today's video. The only thing I told you is that I spoiled the books for you, which I do. I do talk about these books in depth. So if you don't want to be spoiled, this is your second warning. But also I wanted to give a content warning because all the books I read for this were either horror or thriller or had dark themes. So if you didn't want to hear about anything like that today, this is your chance to leave the video. Specific content warning for violence, torture, essay, emotional and physical abuse, captivity, religious trauma, bugs. I do talk about bugs a little bit in this. Death of a pet, child abuse, all the bad things, really, just all the bad things. I don't talk in specific detail. They are brief mentions, but I did want to let you know because I don't want anybody to feel bad while watching my video. So if you're not up for it, please feel free to leave. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself. If you decide to stay and watch my video, I appreciate you so much. Thanks for being here either way. So this book, again, is this woman's journal. She's writing it in secret. She's currently in a cult compound. They're not supposed to read, write, speak, eat, nothing really, except try to become enlightened. So there's different tiers in this cult, as there typically is. You have the servants. The servants literally just keep, they're slaves, basically. Servants are typically, are contaminated, they have been sick. There's some kind of plague going on, I assume a COVID reference. They're just not perfect. They're not prime specimens, if you will. That's a terrible way to describe a human, but that's kind of the vibe. There's the Unworthy, which are a tier up, and these are the people who come to the compound who are mark-free. They don't show any evidence of illness or sickness or deterioration. Well, they're all women, so they're very attractive women, and, they're desirable in some way. You have the saints who have their eyes sewn shut, which doesn't seem ideal, and they sing. They're the only ones allowed to sing, and they sing during the services that they have. They have the enlightened, which once you become enlightened, nobody ever sees you again. You go behind a closed door. And they just think being enlightened is the best thing ever. It's the best option. And I think it's because they don't know what happens to them. I did guess correctly what happens to them. I thought it was fairly obvious, which when I get further into it, you'll probably see that as well. The diaphorous spirits, I believe, have their tongues cut out. I'm not sure what they do. This is an unreliable narrator, so she might not know. And then we have auras who have had their eardrums perforated, so they cannot hear anymore, but they will give announcements, they'll speak, they'll dance. They're more like an oracle. What comes to mind is that scene from the 300 when the girl's in the water and she's oh. And then there's the superior sister who is second in command. She is a boss bitch, okay? She walks around in big old combat boots, military attire. She has a whip and she's not afraid to use it. She's very scary and intimidating. And she's the one that's just making sure everybody stays in line. Nobody's coming up with an original thought. And then there's another group called the Chosen. They interpret God's signs. So if something happens, let's say there's like the weather's about to change. They're like, oh, it's a sign from God that we need to do more sacrifices or some shit. So there's a man who runs this place. He's the only man there. Suspicious. And you never see him. He's always in shadow. They don't know what he looks like. They only hear his voice. And he only shows up during their services. Gives a sermon about how they're basically pieces of shit and how they can become better so they can get promoted in this cult. All of the Unworthy wear white habits, like they're dressed like nuns. As you read her journal, she's dropping some lore about the place, how there used to be monks here, they're in a monastery. There's a rumor that he and the superior sister murdered them all, so then took over their monastery, probably because they had resources. The Unworthy aren't allowed to eat anything but crickets, so they make all of their food out of cricket protein, so they make cricket bread or cricket soup. Sounds tasty. You find out that all of the women in the Unworthy class are put against each other. So it's very much like if you see any of them doing anything wrong, they'll tell on each other to the superior sister. They also will do things to each other to torture each other, essentially. They give out punishments, like very, very harsh punishments for very minor things. When they get there, you get a new name. You have to learn this new language. You can't speak in your original language. You can't talk about your past. You can't do any of that. You gotta adhere to the rules. There's this new woman there who's really struggling with this. They're supposed to sit in absolute silence during the sermons, and she laughs at something, like he says something that could be an innuendo, and she laughs, and her punishment is to have something put on her mouth that literally clamps it shut and perforates it, like puts holes in it to hold her mouth shut, and she has to wear it for weeks. As you get through the journal, it just like girls like infected, like it's so nasty. They fast all the time, like there's so much going on. She has it out for this woman named Lourdes. She hates her. She's constantly trying to find ways to get her in trouble or to mess up her chances of becoming enlightened, and she and her are like neck and neck for this, right? She's putting cockroaches in her bed. She'll like clean something and then she'll mess it up, or she'll like sabotage her. She's in charge of sewing up the eyes for the Chosen or the Saints, I don't remember which ones, and sabotaging that. Also, one of the things a superior sister would do is if one of the Unworthy are out of line, she'll pick somebody to pick a punishment for her. Some of these punishments are bananas. There's various different types of torture. They get very creative. The more creative they are, the more points they get to potentially become enlightened, and there's like a whole thing. And she is like all in. Like she's drinking the Kool-Aid, she's making the Kool-Aid. So you're reading her day-to-day life. If she gets caught even writing, and then especially writing about her past, they will kill her. She's very afraid to explore this. She desperately wants some record of her, that she existed. So she gets a little more bold. Eventually, she starts to open up about her mother. Her mother tells her about how the world was before. She tries to give her as much of an education as she can. Her mother taught her to read and write, but they're also starving and really struggling to find water. And one day she comes into the kitchen and her mother has died. She's starved to death, has to go off on her own. She doesn't fill in a ton of blanks. I think also because she hasn't thought about this in a long time and it's traumatic, so a lot of it she doesn't even remember. And she writes about how she found a group of kids. They teach her how to survive, really take her in. They're called the Scorpion Kids, and I really liked this section. It was very sweet. Because she's the only one who can read and write, she reads to them. She tries to teach them words, and it's a very sweet moment. But one day she comes back from scavenging and they're all dead. They're all been murdered by the adults. And the adults in this situation are very scary. They're very brutal and violent. They are cannibals and they eat children. And it's like a whole thing. Very, very scary. And she escapes and she goes out into the world on her own. She eventually runs into a cat that she named Circe. What I really liked about the parts about the cat is you don't know it's a cat until later, because she never describes it as an animal. And you're kind of like, is this a creature? Is this a figment of your imagination? Is this a person? So her and this cat become very close. It's her only friend in the world. She tells you a few memories that she has with this cat. And then she says, I'm finally ready to write about what happened to Circe. What happens is she gets found by some men and they brutally assault this child. It doesn't go into like specific detail, but you know what's happening. And they kill this cat, and it's so over the top, unnecessary. I don't typically cry when reading books, but this really broke my heart. And then afterwards, she wandered aimlessly. She's lost all will to live at this point. Lost her mother. She's lost her newfound family. She found this cat. It's now dead. She has nothing, like literally nothing. And she's just wandering, and she's like, hopefully I'll die today. And it never happens. And eventually she runs into a wall, which is the cult compound. And they take her in. They're like, you're perfect. We love this for us. And she's been there ever since. We don't know how long she's been there. She doesn't really know how long. Like, I think time, I mean, at this, like, why would you keep track of time? During the apocalypse. You learn all this about her. They have this area called the woods, but they're trying to say that it's not the woods because they're trying to keep people in the compound. And one day she's in there. She's not supposed to be in there, but she's looking for poisonous mushrooms so she can pick up Lord S's plan in the future, right? And she stumbles upon a woman. Unconscious, she's very thin, and she's like, she'll probably die. Also, I think subconsciously, she's like, you don't want to be here. Like, this is not a safe place. She says, you know, if I come back tomorrow and you're still here, I will save you. The woman actually ends up making it to the gate. So they let her in. She's absolutely stunning. She's gorgeous. They're like, oh my God, a new hottie's in town. We love her. And she's immediately fast tracked to like being a potential enlightened because she's so beautiful and stunning. She is also maliciously compliant. She learns all the rules. She's overly zealous to like be the first one to volunteer for sacrifices and tortures and give punishments and things like that. She learns the language very quickly, but she's also like, I'm infiltrating this from the inside, but she's an op. Her name's Lucia, and they immediately make a connection. They talk in secret, and Lucia's like, come to the woods with me tonight. And she's like, oh my God, we will literally be, if we do that, if we get caught, she's like, it's worth it. Please, I want to show you something. She takes her into the woods, and she has the night of her life. They hook up, they're in love, they're doing all of that, and they just start meeting in the woods at night, and they talk. Lucia tells her about her life. They're talking about their past, and they tell each other their real names, and they become very, very close. I think it's more than just romantic love. It's like just intimacy in general, just human connection at all. And this woman has never had this outside of those few small instances in her life, her mother and those kids, but never like romantic love, intimacy, feeling safe with somebody, another human. They bond over this, and they start coming up with plans to save the women who are being put in different kinds of torture. So the woman, I think I told you originally, who had her mouth clamped shut, all of her torture has just been escalating, and she's just like waiting to die, and it's not happening. She gets banished to the Tower of Silence, where they just put you in a tower to die, starve to death basically. They save her and they hide her away. And then Lord S gets severely punished because the writer poisoned her with mushrooms when she was hallucinating, and she was in the woods just like dancing freely, naked. And they're like, you can't do that. You can't talk, you can't sing, you can't be naked, you can't be dancing. You certainly can't be in the garden at night. Other superior kills her. The main character feels guilty because it's her fault that this happened. She hasn't felt guilt in such a long time, or remorse or anything like that in such a long time. And she's overcome with it. And Lucia's like, you have to save these women. Then Lucia becomes enlightened. She's fast tracked to it. They say, you're enlightened now, and they put her behind the locked door. And the main character is like, what? How am I supposed to live without this person in my life? She's learned how to pick locks from back of her days when she was with the Scorpion kids. And she picks the lock, and she's like, comes up with a plan to save Lucia. She's never been in this area of the compound, so she's like, I don't know what I'm gonna find back there. It could be anything, you know. They find Lucia, and it's exactly what you assume it would be if there's only one man in charge of a compound full of women, and they're all very beautiful. So you can put those two puzzle pieces together, I think. Lucia freaks out, stabs him. There's a whole fight. The Superior Sister's there for some reason. It's a whole brawl. They escape. They go and get the women that they have been saving periodically throughout this whole thing. They all escape. When they get to the edge of the woods, the wall is, and they're about to leave, Lucia sees that the main character has been stabbed. And she's like, leave without me. Go live a happy life. Go be free. I'm happy that I met you and I was able to save you. And Lucia's like, come with us. And she's like, I can't. And she writes the final page in her own blood from her own stab wound. And she's just like, I just want somebody to know I existed. And Lucia knows that I existed. And you're reading this, know that I existed. and that is worth it. And that's how it ends. There's a lot that happens in this. A lot of it disturbing. A lot of it kind of wild ramblings. Some of it is hard to read. Some of it's incredibly sad. Most of it's incredibly sad. I enjoyed it. I don't, as much as you can. I enjoyed reading her story. Again, I don't think this is a book I can really recommend to anybody because it's so specific, but I also wouldn't recommend Tenders of Flesh to anybody. I don't think Agustina Bazterrica's writing is something you walk away with feeling warm and fuzzy or feeling like satisfied with reading. I think her books, the two that I read, are to make you think about things and think about your life. And there's a lot of commentary on like classism and misogyny and climate change, global warming, and how that's going to affect us. There were parts in this that were hard to read because it's so close. The situation that she's in, especially with the parts that she was remembering as a child, were so close to. And that was very uncomfortable to read. I think her writing is meant to make you uncomfortable, make you think about how you're contributing to the problem. And while there's not much we can do as individuals, I can do my best to help the people around me and help my community and be a villager. Also learn some freaking survival skills, because that seems like that's going to be necessary. But I do think this book is worth reading if any of that sounded interesting to you. And I don't even think I spoiled anything, because it's just literally this woman's diary, her thoughts and feelings on things and how she perceives the world that she's in without the context of what we know. There's so much that goes on in this book that I didn't mention. I had to take breaks and take time in between reading it because it was just very close to home and very real. This could be someone's experience in 30, 40 years if we don't make changes now. I'm glad that I picked it up. I kind of picked it up on a whim. I do want to read their short story collection. It's 19 Claws and a Blackbird. If you want to expand your mind a little bit and think about the consequences of what we do now and how it may affect the future for children and what their adult life will be like if we don't course correct now, this is the book. So I would recommend this. I don't rate books and I wouldn't know how to rate this at all. I did tab it quite a bit. And I think this is a book I would revisit and reread. I think there would be other elements I would pick up on now that I've gotten the bullet points. But this book will make you think. This isn't a beach read. This isn't a quick, get me through a reading slump. I need something easy, breezy, beautiful cover girl. This is a sit and think about it and maybe learn how to grow vegetables. Maybe donate to a food bank, you know. Today's November 2nd, so SNAP benefits are no longer being provided to people who had them. So if you can, donate to your local food bank, find out what they need, or donate money. That's usually a bit more helpful. Winter's coming up. Donate gloves and hats, socks, things like that for people who are houseless. If I learned anything from this, it's to be better about giving what I can and being less complacent, because I don't want anyone to have to experience what this girl went through before she even got to the cult. The cult may never happen, but the things that happened before that could happen. That was the tragedy in my, like, that part really haunts me. I'll be thinking about that forever. That's where Agustina's like best at, is writing about things that haven't happened but could absolutely happen. So that was The Unworthy. We're gonna move on. The next book, I've already started this, is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer. I'm about 50 pages in, and I don't know what I think about this yet. Everyone says it's great, but I haven't gotten to the point where I'm like, I can't put it down. This book's crazy. This might be a dead. We'll see. So yeah, I'll come back to you once I finish this and tell you my thoughts. Hi, welcome back. I'm here to tell you about We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer. I wasn't a fan. I have to admit. I found this book to be kind of boring. I did not find it twisty turny, couldn't put it down, had to know what's going to happen next, like everyone else did. People talk about this book like it's a mind-blowing psychological horror thriller. Like, it altered their brain chemistry, they couldn't sleep, they were absolutely terrified while reading it. I did not find that. I found it pretty boring, only gave a baseline level of creep factor. Honestly had bad writing at some points. And I found out later that this book is based off of a Reddit thread that Marcus used to keep. I'm not a Redditor, I lurk. That's not my area of the internet so much. I bet on Reddit this was great. I didn't vibe with this. And I'm honestly pretty disappointed because Willow from Willow Talks Books recently uploaded a video talking about this and how much they loved it and thought it was so scary and creepy and, you know, gave it high praise. And I was like, was I missing something? I hadn't finished the book yet at that point. I would have DNF'd it if Willow hadn't given it such high praise. I'm like, well, maybe in the last 20 pages, something will happen. I will understand. That didn't happen. I should say that the blurb being by Frida McFadden should have been the blaring red flag that it is, that I now see. And I will know better for next time. If her name's on it, I'm probably not gonna like it. While this is better than a Frida McFadden book, it only is because it's not misogynistic and weird and creepy. There's not any weird situations the way that Frida McFadden likes to write about. Now I know. And I'll just put that book right back on the shelf next time I see her name on something. That's what I've learned from this experience. Don't believe the hype, and don't read anything blurred by Frida McFadden. So I'm gonna spoil the absolute shit out of this book while I talk about it with you. And we're just gonna start at the beginning. Okay, so this book is following a queer couple, Eve and Charlie. They bought this big old house in the mountains in the Pacific Northwest. It's surrounded by trees and forest. Their driveway is like 1.5 miles long. It's a if you blink and miss it kind of situation. And it's in the backwoods. So you have no business being in this area unless you have business in this area, right? Anyway, it's Friday night. Charlie isn't there. She's out in town doing something. And Eve is doing some like easy home projects, like, you know, stuff you do when you're fixing up a house. And she hears a knock at the door. I already lost my ability to suspend my disbelief at this point because if it were me, I would have been like, you can knock all night, baby. I ain't answering that door. Not in a new house. Not on a Friday night. Not after dark. When it's snowing outside? Absolutely not. I'm a millennial. I don't answer the door for my own parents unless they call or text me first. This book wouldn't have been written, but to quote Jay and Barry, and there would be no story. So we continue on. She answers the door. It's a family. It's mom and dad, 2 boys, tween age, and then the little girl. The mom looks unhappy to be there. She looks annoyed and mad. The dad is smiling. He's handsome, whatever. And he's like, hey, I know this is weird and, you know, totally fine if not, but I used to live in the house. I grew up here. I would love to show my family. Since we're moving cross country, this is probably my only opportunity to show them the house, if that's chill with you. And Eve's like, I'll need to call and ask my girlfriend. Because Eve is a people pleaser. She's anxious. She's paranoid. She lacks self-confidence. And she doesn't know how to tell people no and be assertive. Her girlfriend Charlie typically does that for her. She calls Charlie. She doesn't answer. She's like, great. I guess I'll need to put my big girl pants on and tell this family no. So she opens the door again, which again, I would have just ghosted. I would have just never come back to the door personally, but that's just me. She comes back to the door. She's like, hey, Charlie said no. And he's like, oh, okay, that's fine. We'll just go. And the little girl gets really sad and just puppy dog eyes. Like, I just want to see where my daddy grew up if that's okay. And he was like, fine. I would have been, I don't give a shit. That shit does not work on me. Would have been like, yeah, okay, bye. Have a safe drive. Anyway, so she looks around and she realizes that there's no car. And she's like, hey, where's your car? Like, how did you get here? And the dad's like, oh, we actually parked our moving van at the bottom of the driveway because we didn't want to risk stuck driving it up here. So we walked up the driveway. And she's like 1.5 miles. And he's like, yeah, we're hikers. We're already at 3 red flags at least. Eve also has this monkey toy that is in her brain that she uses to help cope with her paranoia. It's a childhood toy that she had. I'm just gonna read you this description. It's a bit long, bear with me. Mo was a crazy-eyed monkey with symbols. Not the one most would think of, not the iconic Jolly Chimp. No, Mo was a cheap imitation of the classic toy. His fur was off-white, not dark brown. Instead of the familiar yellow vest and red striped pants, Mo wore tacky blue felt overalls and frayed straw hat peppered with holes. The hillbilly chimp, Eve's father called him. Where the Jolly Chimp symbols were brass metal, Mo's were cheap and brittle plastic. They made a pathetic, dull clinking sound when he was switched on, like a broken turn signal. Tack, 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 tack. And when he was bonked on the head, his mouth would open and close, open and close. Marcus loves to repeat things. Open and close, revealing a set of oversized chompers and blood-red gums. Most people thought Mo was creepy, but when Eve was a child, he was her favorite toy by far. Maybe it was because part of her felt sorry for Mo, how everyone called him names. Regardless, childhood Eve couldn't go to sleep without holding him. And now, all these years later, Mo, the crazy-eyed hillbilly chimp, was forever the voice of her paranoia. A paranoia that grew as the family stood cramped in the foyer, huddled around the front door. "Once you let them in," Mo whispered, "they'll never leave." So we have Mo. He shows up quite a bit. She lets the family in. They're like 15 minutes tops. She's like, great. She gives them on a small tour of the bottom floor. Thomas is telling his kids stories, pointing out things that have changed. They go upstairs. Thomas comes in the hallway and he's like, oh, there used to be a dumbwaiter here. That's so weird that they would take that out. That would be a lot of effort. And she's like, yeah, we don't know much about the house because there's no records. And he starts pressing on the walls and they just wallpapered over it. And he's like, oh yeah, you could probably just cut this wallpaper out and maybe you can reuse it. And she goes, oh, thanks for the tip. I'm going to go downstairs. Why would you leave a family of 5 that you don't know wandering the private areas of your house? For someone who's so paranoid, she's very chill. Anyway, so she goes downstairs. Eventually, Thomas comes downstairs. She's like, thank you so much for showing my family the home. We really appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and get going. She's like, cool, bye, thanks. Goodbye. Get out of my house. Paige comes in, Thomas's wife, and she's like, have you seen Jenny? And that's their youngest daughter's name. Thomas is like, no, isn't she with you? And she's like, oh, I bet she's hiding again. And he's like, hiding? And he's like, yeah, she likes to play hide and seek, but she doesn't tell anyone she's playing. And she's, she's really good at it. Like, I'm so sorry about this, but we'll leave as soon as we find her. And she's like, okay. So they start looking for her around the house. They realize that the wallpaper around the dumbwaiter had been ripped off and the dumbwaiter had been lowered. Thomas is like, I bet she's in the basement. And he's like, great. I haven't even been in the basement yet because I hate basements. Cool. So her and Thomas, again, leaving strangers in the main parts of her home, go into the basement to look for Jenny. The power goes out, I think, or there's no electricity down there. I don't know. They have flashlights for some reason. They're looking around. Can't find her. Eve is in like another part of the basement. They split up. This is apparently a very large basement with a lot of different rooms for some reason. Eve comes back from looking wherever she was looking to find Thomas just standing in the middle of a room, like standing extremely still. The flashlight is like limp in his hand, like pointing down, and he's just standing there being like really weird and creepy. Hey, I haven't found her. Do you have any luck? He doesn't respond. She starts saying her name. Hey, Thomas. Hello. Nothing. Taps him on the shoulder. He finally snaps out of it. He's like, hey, I was calling your name. And he goes, oh, so sorry. I'm hard of hearing and I must have not heard you. Sorry about that. I haven't found Jenny. Have you? And she's like, no. So he finds like this weird cubby, the back area of the basement, and they can hear her move it around back there. And he's like, oh, she's probably back there. It was too small for the adults to get through. So like, we'll just have to wait for her to come out. He was like, you don't want to get your daughter out of a random basement she's never been in? He's like, no, she'll be fine. My sister and I used to hang out there all the time. It's probably fine. Keep in mind, that's 20 years ago. You don't know what's going on in there right now, but whatever. Eve is like not okay with this, but she is a people pleaser and cannot assert herself. So they go back upstairs. They hang out waiting for this 5-year-old girl to come out of her hiding spot. Charlie eventually comes home. Eve explains the situation to her. She's like, oh, cool. Do you guys want to stay for dinner while we wait for your 5-year-old to come out of her hiding space? And they're like, yes, of course. And Eve's like, why would you do that? So they have dinner. Jenny eventually comes out. The family are getting ready to leave. And this is like a cliffhanger in the book. Is Charlie holding up her phone and it says alert severe weather. They decide to let the family stay overnight. So we have our first creepy thing that happened. And I'll admit, it was scary. I would not like that if it were me, but I already wouldn't be in the situation at all because I wouldn't have answered the door. We've established this. But if it was me, I would have really hated that and been like, y'all need to get out of my house. You need to get your kid. I don't care if you got to break down the wall. Get out of my house. But they're staying the night. Eve and Charlie are hanging out because it's in their house. It's Friday night. They're drinking wine, hanging out by the fire. They eventually decide to go to bed, so they're winding down. And then they realize the front door is open. And they're like, that's weird because we definitely locked it. They go outside. They see Thomas is in the snow on his knees. He isn't making any noise, but he looks like he's screaming. He's tearing at his face like he's in pain. Charlie walks up, wakes him up, and he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I used to sleepwalk and, I haven't since I was a kid. Honestly, since I lived here, I must have been triggered by all the memories and sorry, I'm so embarrassed. And like, that's okay, come inside, have a drink, get your bearings. So they're hanging out. Charlie asks him some questions about the house, about his family, because she missed all of the original conversation. And then we get more Thomas lore. So apparently he and his family lived in this house. His older sister started having paranoid delusion and started thinking that things in her house were changing, that the wall color was changing from white to gray. There used to be a window here and now there isn't, and just like little tiny things. And then it escalated to you aren't my real parents, you're not my real brother, all of you are fake. Escalated to something that Thomas doesn't want to talk about because it was traumatic. But you can kind of put the pieces together, you know. Trust me, Marcus doesn't allow you to put any pieces together. He's going to tell you all the pieces, but also tell you absolutely nothing at the same time. So that happens. Thomas goes to bed. Eve and Charlie go to bed. That night, Eve wakes up. It's like 3 a.m. and she's probably just anxious about the day. She's very thirsty. She goes downstairs to get a drink of water. The basement door is cracked open. She opens it for some reason instead of just shutting it like a normal person, and sees a creepy black entity shadow stand up. And she runs upstairs. As someone who has seen similar paranormal type situations, I hate that. And would have been also afraid, but I also would have just shut the door because I have seen things like that. Just laying in bed at night. Keep this in mind. I would hate this if this was happening to me. The book did not make it scary, okay? Tries to wake up Charlie to go investigate the basement because she thinks somebody's in the basement, not just a scary ghost monster thing. Charlie's like, shut up, it's 3 a.m. We'll deal with it tomorrow. And she's like, well, someone's in the basement. She's like, yeah, there's already 5 strangers in the house. Let's deal with this in the morning. I'm tired. Eve eventually falls back asleep. In the morning, Charlie's gone. Doesn't like that. She can't find her phone. She's like, well, hopefully the family's gone. She comes downstairs. They are like making themselves at home, making breakfast for the whole family, using their food. She uses the last of her coffee. She's annoyed. She's pissed. She's like, I hate this. You guys need to leave. And he's like, yeah, we just wanted to make sure we had a good meal in before we go. Charlie said it was okay. And she's like, fine. She tries to look for her phone. She can't find it. She's like, I'm going for a walk. Leaves this family of strangers in her home alone. So I'm anticipating that this is going to start becoming a situation where they will not leave and they start wreaking havoc in Charlie and Eve's life. Like they take over or something and it's like a whole thing. No. Eve decides that she's going to walk to the neighbor's house whom she's never met before. It's like maybe a mile or so away, outside of the 1.5-mile track from her front door. In the snow, knee-deep snow, she takes her dog with her. They're walking. She finally gets to the road. She walks up to her neighbor's house. She meets Heather. Heather's an older lady who's lived there for a while. And she's like, can I use your phone? She's like, sure. She tries to call Charlie. Charlie, it's a weird phone call. And she doesn't know how to like take it because it's not like Charlie. And she kind of acts like, you're acting like this is a big deal. It's like, there's strangers in the house and you're not with me. And I hate that. And Charlie basically hangs up on her and she's like, okay, rude. And I would be very frustrated if my partner did that to me. Like very, very annoyed if my partner did that to me. Heather convinces her to stay because she's a lonely old lady. This is where she gets the tea on Thomas because she remembers him as a boy. And I did tab this because this kind of irritated me. This is the kind of writing in this book. After another long and silent deliberation, Heather relented. She leaned closer and lowered her voice to a near whisper. Allison. She started to believe that there was only one way to make it stop, to get her supposed life back. And one winter night, Thomas, 8 years old, awoke to find her standing at his bedside, clutching a fountain pen. Heather leaned back, her face a grim mask. She stabbed him 37 times in less than a minute. She would have done more if his parents hadn't dragged her away. She shuddered. 37 times. Can you imagine? An image, sick and jarring, flashed through Eve's mind. A moonlit room, yellow wallpaper, a gaunt, white-knuckled hand gripping a silver-tipped pen, stabbing into pale flesh up and down, again and again, faster and faster. I mean, I could imagine that, Marcus, without you telling me about it again, but okay. Where is my light going? Oh yeah, daylight savings. Sorry. Marcus doesn't leave anything to the imagination. So this is on the next page. What happened to Allison? Again, the question left Eve's mouth without her brain's approval. Heather looked at her, shrugged. The state took her away, and well, after that, I don't know. Frankly, I don't want to. Eve guessed Allison ended up in either prison or some kind of criminal psych ward, assuming she still walked among the living. Obviously. The state took her away. That means she ended up in prison or a psych ward. That's the options, Marcus. Eve goes back to the house. She's hiking through the woods. She sees a person, like a young guy. She follows him in the woods for some reason, even though there's strangers in her house right now. And she's trying to get home. She's following his footsteps. Eventually the footsteps stop. I guess that's weird. I don't know. It never amplifies. Marcus presents something creepy and then never escalates upon it. And it just is creepy. Nothing brings it to a point of actual terror for me. Personally. For me. The boy disappears. She stumbles upon an old cabin. It's like falling apart. Oh, the dog runs inside. She goes to get the dog and suddenly an old man appears and tells her to get out. She's like, okay, I'm leaving. Sorry. And he goes, wait, they look like them, but that's not what they look like. And she's like, what are you talking about? The people in your house, they look like them, but they're not who they are. She's like, okay, bye, weird man that lives very close to my house. She walks like 2 steps out of the woods, and then she's in her yard, and she's like, wow, that cabin's really close to my house. I didn't know that cabin was there, which is objectively scary. Like, to walk into the woods, get lost, find a cabin, and then immediately find your house. That is disorienting and is scary, and I would not like to be in that situation. But when you're reading it, it's just so whatever. As like I said, it never escalates. Anyway, she gets to the house. The people are still there. She's mad that they're still there. She's visibly annoyed, and they're like kind of catching the hint that it's time to go. They'd offered to give them snow chains for their tires the night before, and Thomas had asked about it, and she's like, I will go get those for you. She goes into the attic. She hears the dumbwaiter go up, and she thinks it's Jenny. And then she hears footsteps. She sees an old lady in a hospital gown. It's like a whole thing. They fight. She ends up falling out of the attic door. It's like one of those pull ladder things. She ends up falling, knocking herself out. The family stay, obviously, because she's like bleeding and stuff. She gets up. She's mad. There's some other things that happen with the family that's like really not important. It doesn't end well, but they finally leave. She watches them drive away. Charlie finally comes home. She's pissed at Charlie. She's like, we are not staying here. We are leaving. Eve is scared because there's a woman squatting in their house. That's how she perceives it. She doesn't want to be there anymore. And Charlie's like, fine, let me go inside, grab a few things. She watched Charlie go inside. She takes a little bit longer than she wants, but you know, when you want something to happen, you are impatient. Anyway, so Charlie comes back. They drive. They go to a hotel room. Eve never finds her phone. So Charlie and Eve go stay in this hotel. They have a bad experience with a hotel clerk. It's kind of a creepy rundown motel situation. They're getting in bed, and Eve notices Charlie's phone's ringing, and it's her phone that's calling Charlie. So she answers it to be like, who the fuck has my phone? And it ends up being Charlie on the other line. She's like, hey, that's not me. I'm me. Charlie and Shiloh aren't your Charlie and Shiloh. They switched with me, and I'm, she sounds like really afraid. And she's like, don't come to the house. Stay where you are. Don't come looking. And hangs up. And she's like, what the fuck? When she turns around, Charlie's suddenly awake and like staring at her, and she's like, what are you doing? She's like, nothing, I had to make a phone call. And she's like, 3 a.m. That's weird. She's like, yeah, I'm gonna step out for a second. Takes the car keys, takes her wallet, just peels off in the truck to go home to the house to save Charlie and Shiloh. Some things happen that aren't really relevant to anything, and she eventually gets to the house. She walks in, it's dark, and the house is like kind of a little bit off than the normal layout. It's like a little bit different. It looks like it kind of been abandoned for weeks. Walking around being like, Charlie, Shiloh. Nobody's answering. She ends up going to the basement. She finds like a weird room that opens into a hospital wing. She finds Charlie. Things happen. Charlie disappears, and she runs to the house. When she comes back through there's like a door that leads to the main house again. When she comes back up, there's Thomas, and he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, I don't know what you're what are you doing here? You were supposed to be gone. He calls her Emma, and she's like, my name's Eve. And she's like, okay, Emma, like, you're my sister, and I love you, and you're being crazy. Come back to dinner. And she's like, what? She comes back to dinner, and the whole family is there, and now she's Emma, Thomas's sister, who has been staying with them because she's been having a hard time. And she's like, what? So she basically just portal into another dimension, essentially. Things escalate quite quickly here because Eve immediately goes into fight or flight, and she chose fight. Ends up murdering Paige, is Thomas's wife, disfiguring Thomas, gets arrested by the police, and she is being interrogated by the police. She keeps insisting that her name is Eve and she's not his sister. She doesn't know what's happening. The version of her that existed in the beginning of the story no longer exists in this parallel universe. She ends up going to a psychiatric hospital for the criminally insane. In between each chapter is like an excerpt from either like an online post, a transcript from a video, a research paper excerpt, which nothing really ties together specifically, but they're all like different stories about this house and the legend of the old house. And the last page is Charlie making a post on essentially Reddit to be like, hey, I cannot find my partner. She's disappeared. Everyone's telling me that she never existed, but I know that she did. I don't know what happened to her, and this is my last resort. Can anybody help me find her? That's how the book ends. And a lot of stuff happened, but nothing relevant. Nothing ever escalated. Nothing ever got to a point of terror. And I read this in the dark with a single lamp. I read this at night. I gave it its best effort. I gave it the old college try, and I was just so bored. By halfway point, I was reading it just to finish it. It was fine. I think if it's your first thriller book ever, it'll absolutely blow your socks off, and you might be afraid. Willow was saying in her video that the reason why she found it so terrifying is because she has OCD, and that's how her OCD kind of manifests. And you can't trust yourself or trust what's real, and you kind of convince yourself what you're experiencing isn't real or didn't happen, or you kind of gaslight yourself. And that makes sense to me as somebody who also struggles with paranoid ideations, and I can get myself to the level of I cannot sleep because I'm convinced somebody's going to break in the house, or I'm convinced that the noise I hear is somebody squatting in my attic space. Like, I get that. I have been there. My brain goes there. I didn't find Eve relatable in any way because of the way my paranoia works. I would have said absolutely no to that family immediately. Wouldn't have even answered the door, and they would have to have broken in and taken over, which I think would have been a scarier book. None of that happened, and I found it very boring and uninteresting. I think the scariest chapter was the chapter where she meets Heather, because there was a lot of, that light wasn't on. I just heard footsteps. That door wasn't open, and now it's open. I guess the point where the book escalates, where Eve goes back to get Charlie, it was just a lot of revisiting things that Marcus had already revealed to us. We never find out what happened to Allison. We never find out what happened to Thomas. We never find out anything. There's no conclusion. There's no wrap up. There's nothing that ties everything together. You're left to wonder, which I guess is fine, but it wasn't scary enough for me to be like, what happened? There's Morse code at the end of all the bonus chapters that are like just excerpts from the internet or things like that. I looked up what it stands for. I guess all of it combined ends up being the old man in the cabin goes by many names, which, okay, great. I wish that the old man in the cabin had more of a point. I wish the writing was better. I wish it was elevated more. I just found it very meh and very boring. Maybe I hyped it up too much. Maybe I had too high expectations for this book to scare me, or at least make me need to put it down for a little bit. Like, I read Grady Hendrix' How to Sell a Haunted House, and there were moments where I had to put it down and be like, it's too dark out for me to read this right now. It's too dark and it's too late, and I'm gonna have to read this in the daytime. And that book was a funny, campy ride. You know, it wasn't really meant to be super scary, but there were moments in it where I was like, I hate this, and I'm gonna close it now and take a little breather. I really just read this and was like, that's enough. I would tell you, like, if you already bought it, go ahead and read it. If you haven't bought it and you're curious about what the hype's about, get it from the library. I'm slowly getting through all the books that I've purchased due to like internet hype, and I'm learning that I need to be careful of who I trust with this. Just because somebody reads 120 books a year doesn't mean they know what a scary book is. And, you know, Willow and I are allowed to disagree. I see her point why she found it scary, and it made sense. And again, I am not diagnosed with OCD. I don't think I have OCD, but I relate to the paranoia and it escalating to a point of disabling your life. So I do relate to that. This could have been way better, and it just wasn't. It's a no for me. So I have moved on. I have already started this, In the Dream House, a memoir by Carmen Maria Machado. And I am 30 pages in. I'm already been tabbing the absolute shit out of it, and I'm loving it so far. I'm very hyped to finish this. I will get back to you once I finish this book. Hello, I'm back again. I have finished In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. I do believe I said that wrong when I introduced this book earlier. I'm trying. I'm doing my best. I loved this book. I finished it a few days ago. I'm kind of obsessed. It is so good. This is a memoir that follows a relationship that Carmen had with a woman. It chronicles the beginning of the relationship to the end, as well as some moments in her life, memories with friends, families, other relationships that she's had, as well as present time while she's in the midst of writing this. I absolutely devoured this book. It was so good. I didn't want to put it down. More than one occasion, stayed up way past my bedtime reading this. I typically try to read for an hour or so every day, but sometimes it's every other day. I missed a day reading this, and the whole time I was like, I want to read this book and I don't have time to do it. And I was very upset about it. As you can see, I tabbed a lot, almost every page. Some have multiple tabs on them. There were so many lines in this that I've either wholeheartedly related to, gutted me or was just such a good point or just something information I wanted to remember. This book is broken up in vignettes that are titled different things. So just flipping to one random one. Dream House as Void. Dream House as Exercise in Style. Dream House as Epiphany. Some are paragraph long, some are more than multiple pages long. Some of them are like deep analysts. She analyzes the Gaslight movie. She analyzes the episode of Star Trek and also like a song from the 80s that got re-released later in life. The song was actually about a woman, not a man. I have marked a couple sections I wanted to share with you. So I'm just going to read the one that I like read this and was like, oh, we understand each other. Dream House as Luck of the Draw, page 24. Part of the problem was, as a weird fat girl, you felt lucky. She did what you wished millions of others had done. Look past arbitrary markers of social currency and seen your brain and ferocious talent and quick wit and pugnacious approach to assholes. When you started writing about fatness, a long time ago, in your live journal, a commenter said to you that you were pretty and smart and charming, but as long as you were a Zatvig, you'd never have your choice of lovers. You remember feeling outraged and processing the reality and practicality of what he said. You were so angry at the world. You wondered, when she came along, if this is what most people got to experience in their lives. A straight line from want to satisfaction, desire manifested and satisfied in a reasonable succession. This had never been the case before. It had always been fraught. How many times had you said, if I just looked a little different, I'd be drowning in love. Now you got to drown without needing to change a single cell. Lucky you. If that doesn't sum up my dating experience, I don't know what would. That's a perfect representation of how I felt. So many times did I wish that I looked a little different. How easier that would have made my life, especially with dating, but also with so many other elements. Like pretty privilege and thin privilege is definitely a thing. And when you got both, like, the world's just easier for you. I'm sorry. Another one that I really related to, this is on page 139 of Dream House's Ambiguity. When I was a teenager, there was a girl in my sophomore year English class. She had luminous gray-green eyes and a faint smattering of freckles across her nose. She was a little swaggery and butch, but also loved the same movies I did, like Moulin Rouge and Fried Green Tomatoes. We sat diagonally from each other and every day talked until our teacher threatened to separate us. I liked her in a way that made me excited to go to class. And I didn't understand why. She was such a good friend and so fun and so smart. I wanted to rise out of my seat and grab her hand and yell, "To hell with Hemingway!" and haul her out of class. All to some end I couldn't quite visualize. From the corner of my eye, I'd stare at her freckles and imagine kissing her mouth. When I thought about her, I squirmed, tormented. What did it mean? I had a crush on her. That's it. It wasn't complicated. But I didn't realize I had a crush on her because it was the early 2000s and I was just a baby in the suburbs without a reliable internet connection. I didn't know any queers. I did not understand myself. I didn't know what it meant to want to kiss another woman. Years later, I figured that part out, but then I didn't know what it meant to be afraid of another woman. Do you see now? Do you understand? That section brought to mind so many crushes I had in school and in life that I didn't know were crushes. I grew up evangelical and we were taught to not think about sex at all. And if you think about sex with the same sex, then you might as well just you're going to burn in hell. So I pushed all of that away. I used to tell people I was painfully straight. And you know what? I wasn't wrong. It was painful. Just so many moments in this book just like made me feel so seen and recognized. And I immediately brought to mind like my own similar experience in high school of like randomly getting close to a girl in my class, wanting to be around them all the time. I didn't know what that was about. And now I know I had a crush on you. Hey girl, I hope you're doing well. This book also highlights the lack of information we have about queer relationships and how abuse manifests in those relationships. Because queer relationships are not the same as hetero relationships. There are differences. I wouldn't know. I'm unfortunately in that Venn diagram of bisexuals who's only been with men. Hate me in the comments. Anyway, what was I saying before I just roasted myself? Oh, and how there's like not enough information about it. There's not enough research on it. And what we do have is so little. You can tell that she really poured over the resources that she had, the essays that she had access to, the articles, and that kind of thing. At the end of the book, she really talks about like looking for validation that her experience was as bad as she felt that it was. which I also related to because I've also had experiences where if you tell them to somebody else, it sounds like a nothing issue. But for you, your world is disintegrating around you. Nothing is more invalidating than telling somebody like one of the worst things that happened to you and they're like, that's a non-issue. That's literally nothing. Get over it. And you're still dealing with the aftermath. She highlights very interesting stories, the few that happened in like the 17th and 18th century, where women in queer relationships were either hurt or unalived by their partners. And when asked why they did it, they're like, well, we were in love and she didn't love me anymore. And she highlights a group of women who they were up to be acquitted for their murder convictions because determined that they had acted out of self-defense and had battered wife syndrome is what they deemed it. And they all got acquitted except for one who was in a lesbian relationship. And they deemed that it couldn't be the same thing. She couldn't have been acting in self-defense because it was, how could a woman be physically abusive to another woman? And it's like, okay. All humans can be abusive. I think we can all collectively agree with that. How are you supposed to appeal to the courts when they all think that you shouldn't exist in the first place? You know? And you can tell, like, as she's navigating this and trying to figure out what happened to her and determine that it is abuse, she gaslights herself in so many ways, as much as her partner gaslights her. She talks about how, like, in queer culture, we are just now coming to a point where we can be out and happy and live our authentic, gay, happy lives. And which is great. And I love that. But there's also this element of, because we're just here, we're all navigating these relationships and all learning how to be in queer relationships. We don't have the same advantage as heterosexual people because they have had eons of experience and can say, yeah, that's abuse. Yes, that is wrong. This is not how relationships should go. As queer people, we don't necessarily have that as much. A lot of us are just happy to be in a queer relationship. We're all learning at the same time. It's like we're all just starting to date, if that makes sense. As I said earlier, I am in the bisexual diagram of never actually being with a woman. I also don't know how I would navigate that because my only experience has been with men. I don't know how that relationship would manifest for me and how I would handle these kind of situations, because I think I would be asking myself all the time, is this just how it is? Is this just how it's supposed to be? It's funny how your brain will just like come up with solutions that aren't really solutions for you. I feel like this book is required reading, especially if you are queer in any way. You should read this. It feels like it was written out of necessity. There's a moment where she writes about how she locks herself in a bathroom because her partner is having a meltdown essentially and just being scary, and I felt like I was in that bathroom with her. This book made me feel in moments the way that We Used to Live Here should have. Now that was written by a man, so there were moments where I was like, my heart was pounding. I had shortness of breath. Like I couldn't read it fast enough. At the same time, I think it made it more intense because this actually happened to her. Also, her descriptive writing is so stunning. I know exactly what this house looks like. I can picture it in my mind. The choice of words that she uses is perfect. It's not too much. It's not so self-indulgent. It's not over the top. It's just the right amount of information with the right amount of flourish. It's stunning. The way that she writes, it literally brings you to that place in time. Like it feels like you're time traveling with her. I'm currently watching Red Dwarf, and there was a scene where they literally walk into a picture and then they're there in real time. And that's what this feels like. A couple instances where they have like a dinner party and you feel like you're a guest at this dinner party witnessing this relationship. There's a moment where her ex is blowing up her phone and her roommates are there and she's freaking out about it. And you feel like you're in the room, like telling her, don't answer the phone. It's so good. And you can tell that she went through a array of emotions, just visceral with her writing with this, just left nothing on the table to be this woman that she wrote about. Deserved. I mean, I believe Carmen and everything that she says. I don't think that she did anything wrong in that relationship. She was absolutely the perfect partner and you were awful. But that's my biased opinion. I could not imagine having a book like this written about me, because not only was she kind and courteous to this person, never really once said a bad word about her, just the bad things that she did. She is a professor at a college and I would love to take her class. I have no aspirations to be a writer, but I just would love to pick her brain. She seems like the kind of person we would have infinite amount of stuff to talk about. She has another book called Her Body and Other Parties, and I want to read that so bad. The elements of this where she talks about being fat and growing up fat were very relatable. And I think this is a book that I will think, my elbow just popped. I will think about this for a long time, probably reread as I get older and move on through my life, and recommend to so many people. I think even if you're not queer, you should read this book. I walked away from this book feeling validated. I got extra brain wrinkles. Like, I just feel so smart after reading this. I'm more sympathetic. I feel more connected to queerness and feel more secure in that identity. For myself, I kind of just got the language for this and how it looks different for everybody. It's not one linear thing. Like, just because I didn't come out at 16 and have only dated women doesn't mean I'm not still attracted to women. And just because I don't present myself in a more masculine or androgynous way doesn't mean I'm not non-binary. It's a spectrum. We're all different, and it's okay, like, that you don't fit in this box, because the whole point of being queer is that you don't fit in a box, right? If you've been looking into getting into nonfiction, I feel like this is a good segue into that. Maybe a soft launch, because it is written kind of like a literary fiction. It reads like fiction, but it is real. It's her real life. But if you are sensitive to these kind of topics, I do think, because it's written in small vignettes, skip parts of it. Like, once it gets a little, you can just be like, well, I'm going to go to the next chapter. You won't miss any elements. I absolutely love this book. And I feel like it's going to be another book that I won't shut up about and you'll hear me talk about all the time, like Chain Gang All-Stars, which you should read. You should read it right now. Drop what you're doing. Read Chain Gang All-Stars and then read this. Next up, I'm going to read I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. Both of these books were recommended by Allison Pages. Every book I've read that Allison Pages has recommended has been an absolute banger. She has not been wrong yet. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started on this, and when I'm done, I will check back in and we'll wrap this video up. Hi, I'm here to talk to you about I Who've Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. I finished this a few days ago. I loved this. Please read this book, especially if you're on the spectrum. I related so much to this main character. I think this book feels like it would be sad. It gives a realistic hope at the end. It's not sunshine, rainbows, butterflies. This book reminded me a lot of The Unworthy. Also has an unnamed main character, captivity kind of vibes. They're the same color, different hue, but they're both horrific in their own way. I'm really glad that I put this in this reading group, and I think it also paired very well with In the Dream House. We used to live here. We know how I feel about that. 3 out of 4 is not bad. What's this book about? This book follows a woman who has grown up in a bunker with 39 other women. She's the youngest of the group. At the time of being put in the bunker was probably 2, 3, while the next youngest woman was probably late teens, early 20s. So she's much younger than everybody else. At the beginning of the book, she's at the end of her life and she has decided that she wants to write about her experience, hopefully for somebody to find in the future, and just know that she existed and what happened to her. Maybe they will know the answers to so many questions that she just doesn't have the ability to know. The women show up in a bunker one day. They don't have a lot of memory of what happened to them, and she pretty much remembers nothing before the bunker. She grows up like this. At first, the women kind of ignore her. They take care of her basic needs, but they don't nurture her. They're also not allowed to touch, so they can't pick her up or coddle her or anything. So she's grown up not being held or carried. They kind of just ignore her. I think she's a reminder of what they've lost. She's also the only thing keeping time, because as she grows up, they can see how much time has passed. It becomes this elephant in the room. She's probably 10, 11, 12 at this point. She asks the women what a period is. She doesn't have one. She never actually develops to hit puberty, probably due to the circumstances. And I loved this. As somebody who also didn't start my period as a teenager, I don't have a regular cycle, and I always appreciate when this is represented and not as seen as a sad thing. Because I also have no desire to have children. I think me lacking the appropriate functions to conceive is a blessing, not a curse. A lot of times where this is brought up, it's like, oh, so sad. They can't have a child. And it's like, some of us are really content with that. Because I bring it up casually in conversation and people are like, oh, that's horrible. I'm so sorry. And it's like, no, it's the worst part about it is I can't get adequate health care because I don't want to have a child. So they don't care about the other issues that come with having a hormone imbalance. I just wanted to mention it because there may be other people out there like me who are like totally fine with it. But anyway, she gets frustrated because the women won't answer her questions like, what's a date? What's a movie? What's school like? What was your life like before the bunker? And they don't want to talk about it due to trauma. They probably really struggle with losing their whole life, like their family, their children, their parents, their boyfriends, their girlfriends, their jobs, their life, their goals, their dreams, like, are like gone, right? And she doesn't have the concept of that kind of loss. So she doesn't understand why they may not want to talk about it. She realizes she can daydream. So she just starts sitting in the corner of the bunker and thinking. So she's not eating or having to do what little there is to do. She just sits and stares and thinks. And it kind of freaks the women out. They're like, what is she doing? And she doesn't talk to them because she's mad at them for not telling her everything they know about life. And she hyperfixates on one of the guards. I don't think I mentioned that. So in this bunker, they are guarded by men 24/7. And they just walk in a loop back and forth in front of the cage. They never speak to them. They never acknowledge them. And unless they're breaking the rules, then they will whistle, and they have whips to, get them in line. She hyperfixates on one of the younger guards. He's probably 19, 20, and decides that she thinks he's attractive because he's not 50, basically, and starts imagining what a date might be like, kissing him might be like, what talking to him might be like, although she has no context to come up with. So she's really blank slate here. And I just found this so relatable as a undiagnosed autistic child, having so many questions about the world and adults refusing to give me the answers to those questions. I definitely decided I'm going to live in my head because I am weird and I freak these adults out. I freak out the other children. She doesn't have other children to engage with, but I freaked out the other children, and I'm just going to sit in my head and daydream about a life that's outside of the one that I think they call it maladaptive daydreaming. This part of the book I very much related to because I definitely was doing this, which is why I struggled in school so much, because I was dissociating all the time. Anyway, she discovers a woman, Athena, that is willing to talk to her. She tells Athena, hey, I found out I could count my heartbeat. And this is how she becomes their clock, because she can count her heartbeat. She knows her heart will beat X amount of times in a minute. She is apparently a mathematician, even though she's never understood math. And all the women are like, I don't remember math at all. I find counting very difficult. I lose my train of thought very quickly. Literally after like 9 or 10, I'm drifting off to dreamland. This part kind of spun me out of control, how she was able to keep track of how many heartbeats she has in one day, and that she would keep count even while she was asleep and wake up with knowing a number. And I was like, that's wild. Anyway, the women get really excited because now they know what time it is, something from their old life, to just be like, hey, what time is it? And somebody say it's 2:00, and they're like, I know what time it is, So that brings up some morale for them. One day, there's an alarm that goes off, and it's very loud. It's very aggressive. They've never heard this alarm, and they're like, what the fuck? It was about mealtime, so the guards will open the gate so they can put in the food for them to prepare. They make them cook their own food. The guards drop everything and run out. And they're like, what the fuck is happening? Once she got over the shock of hearing a sound she's never heard, she starts thinking. And the other women are like, what does this mean? What's going on? Are they a little triggered from being brought to the bunker in the first place? The main character realizes that the door is unlocked, and she immediately leaves. She's like, I have left the bunker. The women are afraid to leave because they don't know what the guards might still be there, and she has no concept that the guards might still be there. So it turns out the guards are gone. They're nowhere to be seen. They decide that they're gonna leave the bunker in case the guards come back, and they just start walking, really. They come across a second bunker, and they find that the cage was still locked, and the women were trapped inside. I'll read that to you. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us poor sinners. Later, she told us that she had dredged this up from her childhood when her grandmother had taught her the Christian prayers without her parents knowing. The other women also kneeled down and echoed her words, as if in the face of horror, ancient rituals regained their meaning. The muted drone of jumbled words rose above the terrible jumble of corpses, when Rose's voice could be heard. She sang, and at her once rich, powerful soprano filled the air. I didn't understand the words, but the tone was so slow, sad, and profound that horror turned into grief, and I felt my heart contract. When she stopped, we all felt silent, and we left noiselessly, one at a time, and very slowly made our way back up. That evening, Athena explained that Rose had sung a prayer for the dead in Latin, a language that had been dead for so long that it was only used for ceremonies. I didn't understand, and I still have not really understood what a ceremony is. But if anyone ever reads these pages, they'll know. There's another moment where Rose sings where they're sitting on a hill looking out at the sunset, and she just starts singing a song and the other women join in. And I really love that element. I think that music really brings people together. I used to sing, and the idea that I could be somebody who could provide that feels, I don't know, just kind of warmed my little singer heart. There's multiple moments where Rose sings, and when she eventually dies, the main character is like, well, I guess I'll never hear music again. And it's because she has no idea how to like even start learning to sing. Also, they weren't allowed to speak very loudly in the bunker, so Rose couldn't even sing while they were imprisoned. They walk for a long time. They find nothing but other bunkers. There's little cabins, and then the bunkers are underground. And every time they come to a cabin and go to the cage, they are locked in, and they've all died. Also, some of the bunkers have men in them, only men, but most of them are women. And there's never any reason why. There's no documentation, there's no letters, there's no trace of why this happened. So they kind of decide, like, maybe even the guards don't know why they're there. They're just dropped off for their shift. They don't know. We never find out why these women were taken and why they were put in a bunker. It's kind of heavily implied that they're no longer on Earth, that they may be on another planet. But this also could be so far in the future that the Earth's landscape has changed, or they're in a very mass area that's like severely underpopulated. And we never know. We never find out. They walk for 2 years. They never find civilization, just bunkers. Every bunker they find, again, is filled with bodies. There's one moment she's like, it was just a stroke of luck. The key happened to be in the door and the guard dropped it. And it was close enough for us to reach it. Because there were other places where they had also dropped the keys and it was just out of reach. The idea that they wouldn't even think to unlock the door for them is so inhumane, and I don't understand how you get to that level of carelessness. They decide to build homes for each other. They figure it out. They just start putting rocks and sticks together and, hopefully they can build a structure. Luckily, the environment that they're living in is pretty mild. They don't need to protect against the winter, deep rainy months or anything. Because our main character is the youngest and she is bored out of her mind, really takes to building. And she also wants to keep walking and exploring and seeing the world because she's never experienced life before. And, just like any young adult would want to do is explore and live life. And the women are kind of like, what's the point? There's nothing out there. We're never going to find anything. Let's just stay here and I guess die. And she's like, what's the difference between being here and being in the bunker? I see both sides. They let her go on expositions, either to get more food or get resources from the other bunkers. And she goes with other women who volunteer to go with her. They show a few vignettes of her talking with some other women, but she's really close to the oldest woman, Dorothy, and Athena, who was the most educated, all of them, at the time of their capture, was studying to be a nurse, while the rest of them were kind of stay-at-home moms or worked in factories, never left their hometown kind of people, right? So most of this is just her wandering until the women get so old that she has to stay and take care of them. Since Athena is the only one with any medical knowledge, she teaches her how to do it, and this becomes her job. Our main character has no concept of feeling guilty over taking a life or that it's wrong or that you shouldn't do it. It's essentially the women who ask and get to the point that there's nothing else that they can do. She puts them out of their misery, which honestly, I'm for. I am for end-of-life care. And if you are dying a slow and painful death and you want to go, we should let you go. We do it for dogs. We do it for cats. Why can't we do it for ourselves? It's like we are so brainwashed by capitalism that we would rather drain you of whatever resources you have left than let you leave. It's crazy to me. We're learning a lot about Barbara today. She's very firm on, I'm only going to do it when there's nothing else. There's nothing left for you. It's very clear that you are dying and this is the it. Because some of them are like, just take me out now, friend. Eventually Athena dies. I didn't know exactly when she stopped breathing. We were both so tranquil and quiet. Death is sometimes so discreet that it steals in noiselessly, stays for only a moment, and carries off its prey. I didn't notice the change. When I was certain it was all over, I lay there for a long time, holding her to me, as she had wanted. It was all I could do. So Athena dies. There's one left. She says, just take me out. She's like, I'm not gonna do it. And she just gives up. She just becomes like a shell of a person. And at some point she's like, I'm growing impatient. Like, I just want to leave because I'm young and I have life to live. Maybe I should just take her out because I am ready. It's one of the least liked women. It's like, out of all of the women left, it has to be the most boring, dull one. So the last woman finally dies. And she packs up and she starts walking. She walks for years and just starts coming to each bunker, seeing what's there, getting supplies, resting, moving on. She eventually comes across a bus. This bus was full of guards. They have all died. And they all have little packages. And in each of them have a book about gardening. So she takes one of the books. She's excited to see a book. She has learned the basics of reading, but it was hard to teach anything past that because they didn't have any resources. So she finally has a book. That's very exciting. She ends up staying at the bus for a while, gives them a proper burial, at least the one as well as she can imagine one would be. Takes their boots and their clothes because they're just wearing like tunics that they've made out of scraps of clothing. So she's excited to have real clothes to wear. That's probably the most exciting find. She keeps walking and eventually she's starting to get tired. She's like, there's nothing out here but bunkers, and every bunker is the same. Cage full of corpses, food, resources, I leave. It's the same thing every time, to the point where she kind of stops checking because she was originally giving reverence to these people and she was like, what's the point? I'm the only one left. There's like no reason. She comes across a bunch of stones stacked up on top of each other in a pyramid. And she's like, that's weird. That looks very intentional. So she starts picking up the stones, and underneath is a latch. What's this? She opens it. It's a staircase. She walks down the stairs. When she gets to the bottom, it's a fully furnished bunker. We're talking food, kitchen, bed, soap, tables, chairs, books, tons of books, a laboratory, which is not useful to her, resources to last her the rest of her life. And she decides to make this her home base. And she's overwhelmed by it. Like, she has a hot bath for the first time in her life. And she's like, this is what the women were talking about. She sleeps in a bed for the first time. She has food that she's never had before, like cheese and wine and bread and, just stuff that they weren't finding in the bunkers before. And she's like, I got to try most of the things all these women were talking about this whole time. She makes this her home base and she continues to walk around, never finds anything else. She's writing her memoirs, like, the most exciting things I found was the bus and this bunker, and that's it. Nothing else. She realizes that she's dying and she is no longer leaving the bunker. She's in her 80s now. She's just reflecting on her life. I really like this line at the end. I am in my late 30s and I think all the people I know are absolutely losing their minds over aging. And I really appreciated this. I nearly forgot. Of course, one of the most wonderful discoveries was the mirror. I had never seen myself. Athena had told me I was pretty, but that meant nothing to me, and it still didn't. Even so, I was fascinated and spent hours gazing at myself. I didn't know my expressions. I learned what my smile looked like, and my serious or worried face, and I stared at them thinking, that's me. Even now I like to look in the mirror. Over the years, I followed the progress of the wrinkles furrowing my brow. My cheeks have grown thinner, and my lips have become pale, but it's all me, and I feel a sort of fondness for the reflection in the mirror. I must have been 14 or 15 when we got out, and Laura had died 23 years later, and I walked for 2 years before arriving here, in this place which I call my home. So then I was just over 40. That was 22 years ago. I suppose I'm an old woman now, but I still love looking at my face. I don't know if it's beautiful or ugly, but it is the only human face I ever see. I smile at it and receive a friendly smile back. I love that. Really think that's something I'm going to carry with me as I age. As you can see, I am going gray, which I love. I've always loved salt and pepper hair, and I feel very lucky that I'm growing gray the way my father has, with a good streak of gray in the front, and I kind of love that mirror of my dad. I love aging. I can't wait to look older, to be honest. Let my face and my body just become what it wants. I felt seen throughout this whole entire book. This is the book I'm going to read again and get more out of the older that I get. And I just really appreciated this so much. I do want to read a little bit of the afterword, because even the afterword was like, yes, give me more, queen. I need more. She has no idea of what a normal life might look like, and the other women react to this with unease. But maybe it's the femininity itself that is the strange thing. From the offing of the narrator's sexual fascination with the guard calls up modern echoes of submissiveness and fantasy. What could be more human than want and desire? The machinations of your body kicking in. And what a strange thing we are forced to admit desire is when it's seen at this distance. The narrator observes human behavior and bodies objectively in a way that is both curious and dehumanizing. Her perspective emphasizes both her disconnection with her body and the essential strangeness of having one, particularly one that you might not have been taught about, one controlled by others. She may not have learned behaviors of dances and marriages, but even a person raised in captivity wants to learn, yearns to see beyond their cage. How much of our humanity is intrinsic? How much remains when all else is stripped away? I do want to leave with a quote that was also put in the afterword, and I feel like it is the one. I was forced to acknowledge too late, much too late, that I too had loved and was capable of suffering, and that I was human after all. I think this book was so far ahead of its time. The mentions in the afterword how this book probably didn't take off like it did because it was 100 years too late and 100 years too early at the same time. And I really understand that. It feels like it was written this year. I mean, they classify it as sci-fi, but I don't even feel like it's that. There isn't a genre to put it in. And I love that about this book. And I am on the fan club. I'm on the train. I'm the conductor. And I will shout to the rooftops. This will become a book you'll never hear me stop talking about. It was so good. There was also a moment in the afterword where they talked about what it would be like to live in a society that wasn't affected by the patriarchy or patriarch at all. How men had no say in how these women lived after they left the bunker. And I really enjoyed that thought. Love to read an analysis on this book and just learn more about it. I'm trying not to hyper focus because I got other things to do and other things to read, but I did really enjoy this. I think if you have it or been thinking about picking it up, you absolutely should. And I hope you get as much out of it as I did. I finished this feeling like very seen, and I related to so many elements I kind of expect to end my life alone. I felt very comforted in the way that this book ended. To die with dignity, to die proud of the person that you were and life that you had lived, even though nobody was there to witness it. I hope to read other books that make me feel like this one did. I have read 4 books for you. Most of them were great. The Unworthy, We Used to Live Here, In the Dream House, and I Who Have Never Known Men. I think this was a good setup. Also, they all kind of match. They're all like red and black. I really appreciate you hanging out with me, listening to me gab about books, and let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know if you're planning to read any of these. Let me know if you also disliked We Used to Live Here, because I feel like I'm alone in that. I think I'm the only one who found that book boring and unscary. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the problem here. Let me know if you've read I Who Have Never Known Men. If you have read it, let me know other books that I should read that is like this, because I want to read more books with no men in them. I really appreciate you being here and staying to the end of the video. I know this was a long one, so you must really like to hang out. So you should like, comment, and subscribe so I could quit my 9 to 5. I will see you in my next video, which will be uploaded very, very soon. Bye.